Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Everybody hear me okay? I'd like to call the July 27th, 2020 Special Board of Education meeting to order. Sandy, are we on?
Yes,
on
ma'am.
live?
We're recording.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you. We have one item on the agenda today, and that is to move forward with option B or option C in regards to reopening of Currituck County schools.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion on that.
Okay,
And I'd like to make a motion that we move forward with option C for 2 weeks. And then we open K through 5. And we get a plan rolled out to open K through 5 in 4 weeks. And we stagger a plan that by 9 weeks, we're going to have a plan ready for the middle school and the high school. And I'd also like us to send a resolution through Senator Steinberg. Hopefully he can hand deliver it to the governor and ask for some serious consideration on the restrictions that have been put upon us that are going to cause so much hardship for not only educating the students and preventing them from being social disconnected and creating anxiety, but causing undue hardship on the citizens and parents of students that have to find care for their kids while they're at work, preventing, trying to not have the same problem for our teachers that have children. I mean, the recipe, the medicine for this pandemic, no matter which side you sit on, whether you really think it, worse than some other people think, the ramifications are going to be far and wide. And we got to get these kids back to school. We got to get the teachers' kids back to school so they can teach. We got to get working families, people back to school so they can work. We got to get kids back to school. And that's the only way I see to remedy this problem. And so with that, that's my motion.
What is the motion?
The motion is that we start with remote learning, Plan C.
For how long?
I'm sorry?
How long for remote learning?
I'd like to see it last no more than 4 weeks. I'd like to have a plan in place in 4 weeks' time to get K through 5 back in school. I'd like to have a plan in 8 to 9 weeks to get middle school and high school back. We have a very low percentage of cases. I'm a math and numbers guy. We're talking about 99.35% recovery, even if you get contracted. Children are a very small chance of contracting it or transmitting it, coincidentally. Okay? They're not transmitting this disease the way they transmit influenza. And so we need to look at the numbers and the statistics, and we need to get a plan that works better than the plan that we got. And we got to get these kids back to school. I mean, it's more than just the missing education and the, it is so convoluted. This whole thing is really took a bad turn, in my opinion. The only solution is to get kids back to school. Nobody's going to be happy no matter which way we go. Not everybody. We can't make everybody happy. But we really, for the betterment of Currituck County, we got to figure out how to get these kids back in school.
all right, Mr. Croddick, you need to kind of condense your motion.
Yes,
I think
ma'am.
some of the things that you're talking about could be discussed during a discussion, but for right now, restate your motion.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. So what I'd like is us to start with Plan C. In 4 weeks' time, I'd like to have K through 5 back in school. In the 9 weeks that we're going to be remote learning for middle school and high school, I'd like to develop a plan to get them back, starting right after the 9 weeks. I'd like to form either use the same resolution or modify the resolution that Camden has sent to Senator Steinberg to be forwarded to the governor to ask for some waiver or loosening of the restrictions so that we can make the school system function. That's my motion.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion?
Yes, I still take the stance that I'd rather be safe than sorry. And we have a couple districts around here that are starting, with the elementary. And why wouldn't we just, sit back and assess what they're doing to see if they have any problems with it? I would hate for our kids and teachers to come back and something happen then.
I believe some of those are starting in 2 weeks. So if we do 4 weeks, that would give us a little extra to assess. And I believe based on what we were given last week, we only had about 20% or less of parents and staff surveyed that chose Plan C. This weekend, we received information from public schools that strongly recommended in-person pre-K instruction.
Is Wake and Charlotte-Mecklenburg still Plan C?
Yes.
How many counties have changed, Matt? I know when we met last Wednesday, it was like 50-50.
It's still running close to 50-50 with a few more C than B, and probably about a dozen that are kind of like a hybrid type piece. We're going to start with C and then move to B with like a K5 or K3 type component.
But we're talking about, about 70% of the kids in the state are starting on Plan C?
I don't have that exact number because it's been changing.
Okay. Just considering how big Wake and Charlotte-Meck are.
This is a tough situation for everyone. Let me run this scenario through just so that we want to get our kids back, but so I add the transportation to a further breakdown of busing cost. I think the key is the governor has to move off of his restrictions for us to move forward with a larger plan. If we added an extra hour to the busing every week, when we talked about that with monitors, drivers, extra runs, just on a 4-day week, it's going to cost us approximately $48,660 for an extra hour per week.
Additional to what? That's additional.
In additional to what they already, so off your base cost, you're going to add a cost of $48,660 per week on an AABB schedule, the one that we originally discussed. And went back, I know those questions had come up from the board. To make our nurses full-time, we're going to add a possible increase of $91,580. And let me run this scenario through. If a teacher tests positive, we will have to follow the protocol. That means all students and staff and other staff members that were in close contact with the teacher within 6 feet for more than 15 minutes will need to be quarantined. In elementary school, if it's a grade level teacher, it might only be the class. If it's a specials teacher, it would possibly be all the class that the teacher was in contact with. The positive case has to be reported to the health department so contact tracing can occur. However, we are also going to have to look at our liability for contacting parents and students that may have been exposed. In other words, if the parent hears from the health department and not the school, that's not going to help us with relationships. I just want you to be aware of all those different scenarios as we move forward and look at it. I think our number one goal is to get our kids back to school. We want them and our staff to be safe, and we want to make sure that we are providing the best possible education that we can.
Okay, I have a question. Or am I allowed to ask if we've had any teachers test positive for COVID, or is that against the HIPAA regulations?
I think we can ask if there's, have we had employees that have tested positive? Yes.
Okay.
Employees that have been working are just since March. have we had any employees that are working in our schools today, or obviously not today, but are you just, I mean, is this 12-month employee that's tested positive or someone that's been home since March?
I think the only thing we're safe to say is that we have had employees that have tested positive.
Okay.
So I think it's safe to say that across across our district, we have had different employees in different divisions that have tested across different divisions that have either had to go into quarantine or they've tested positive.
I have another question. We didn't get a chance to hear from you last week when we met about your recommendation. I believe you said that you had a group that met. Could you please answer two things for me? One, what is your recommendation? And two, the group that met, I know it included administrators. Did it also include teachers, counselors, and nurses?
Well, can I butt in right now and just say, he gave us the best information that they had available, and the decision is ours.
Yeah, I know that, but I wondered what his professional opinion was.
I don't mind giving it. So when the governor, and I'm going to go back. So when originally we worked from the concept that we would have option A, B, or C to work from. So when the governor gave his recommendation on July 14th, within a week we had turned around and we had our meeting last Wednesday. And during that time period, we had to dive in and look at B a whole lot differently than we had in the past. If you do B, you are also required to offer C, remote instruction only. It's not just B, AA on an AA, BB, and everybody comes to school. It's B, and we have to offer the option of remote. So given those circumstances, when you look at staffing and busing, the complications in attempting to put into place Plan B with the current restrictions as they are, and implement a Plan C at the same time, which at the high school level is extremely problematic because we have discrete courses and we have to decide which employees can return and which ones can't. It is very difficult to implement both at the same time. Thereby, option C, under the restrictions that could cost us with an extra hour, just almost $50,000 per week on busing, we have our employee complications as well. At this point in time, C would be the best option. Do I think that we can move forward and bring our kids back? And trust me, I'm looking at those elementary buildings and our elementary kids that we're attempting to teach reading. And that is the number one. I mean, we have got to get our kids reading. Knowing that, we have got to find a way, if at all possible, to get our at-risk kids and our young students and eventually all students back to school. But under the current restrictions that the governor gave us and given the requirements under quarantining, option C would be our best option at this point in time.
Did you have teachers, counselors, and nurses on your group that looked at this?
I know that we had nurses and I believe we had teachers, and I'm not sure if we had counselors.
Okay, well, I'd like to say that I do recognize the difficulties with trying to roll out a plan that's going to accommodate all the restrictions and all the students. I really do understand what you're talking about. So that's part of where the resolution comes in, first of all. And second of all, when he gave this order, he was talking about this phase would remain for at least 3 more weeks. So if school starts on the 17th and then we are 2 weeks in, it's possible, I'm not going to say likely, it is possible that some of the restrictions might be lifted. I'm not going to hold my breath, but it could happen based on what he said. So for that and the resolution and the urgency of all the other factors, particularly for these younger kids, We really need to have a plan ready. We really need to get it moving. I mean, look, we got teachers with kids that have the same problem as people that work that aren't teachers. They don't have available placement for childcare. And the ones that do, childcare has been open and they don't have the same restrictions that are being put on the schools. It's like, what is going on? So we have to recognize that Charlotte-Mecklenburg might be, important, but Charlotte-Mecklenburg is not Currituck County. And Charlotte-Mecklenburg doesn't have the low rate of infection that we've seen. So we gotta face this thing head on.
Well, I think what we're trying to do, and I have to speak up here because we're under some guidelines from the governor, and we have a decision to make, either option B or C, and I think we can reassess it if we vote for the 9 weeks and we see that the coronavirus results of positive testing is going down. We can reevaluate it and make decisions at that time. But I think as elected officials for Currituck County, we have a responsibility to keep our children safe, and we have a fiscal responsibility. When we think about $50,000 a week that it would cost to implement additional guidelines that we need to follow, we can't afford that. And I'm not saying it's coming down to the mighty dollar. It's not. But it's a combination of the two. When you break it down, I had a conversation with a parent earlier this weekend, and they didn't understand. I want our kids back to school. I want my grandkids back in school. They're missing out on a lot. And I understand that. It's not that I'm not compassionate for all involved, but I think we need to have a plan in place, and the plan for C with a 9-week evaluation at that time would give us enough time to hopefully get back on track. Because when I look at B and I look at C and I think of how confusing that is, because even with B, I think parents think B is you're going to be back at school, the kids are going to be in a regular routine. That's not the case. That's 2 days a week. And then we also have the virtual online learning 3 days a week. So there's so many things that come into play, not only busing, our transportation, but then you look at our child nutrition, you look at the kids not being able to shake their friend's hand or give them a hug. And you know how kids are. They run up to you and they want to hug you, and then they're going to have their mask on 8 hours a day. They're going to have their temperature checked before even getting on the bus. And I think of my little grandchildren and how that would be so difficult for them. But I just have to err on this side of caution as far as safety for our children, and then a fiscal decision also, how we would implement it without bankrupting the school system.
Yes, ma'am. Are we getting any federal CARES Act money that would be able to be utilized for offsetting any of that busing cost? Is there any of that federal money coming our way?
We receive some federal funds, of which we use the majority to purchase Chromebooks for across the K-3 division, to make with the anticipation that we possibly might be in this position. We had a very short time turnaround, but even then, I don't have the exact dollar amount in front of me, Mr. Craddock, but if let's say it was $500,000, that would buy us at 1 hour extra just for buses a week. Let's say that's 200,000, 400. We'd be done with that money in about 10 weeks.
Yes, sir.
We didn't get millions of dollars.
Well, I'd like to ask one last question. Excuse me, Janet, but are you basing that computation on running all buses as if all schools were open? How did you derive it at $50,000? Is that just for K through 5 bus runs, or does that include?
No, we didn't run for K-5 bus runs.
I'm sorry?
I believe that's for all bus runs under option A and option B.
Okay. So,
for K-5, but I can get that information.
okay.
That was my question. If we're going to pay all of our bus drivers anyway, and we just did K-5, could we not use their bus drivers from the middle school and the high school to help get the K-5 kids there and it not cost us extra money?
I'm not sure what the answer to that question is in terms of the actual cost. I asked for some rough numbers under the previous K-12 AABB scenario, and those were the numbers that came back. I think one of the things I think what perhaps we want to hear is if our restrictions have been lifted or there's some change and gives us some flexibility, can we return sooner than 9 weeks? Yeah, we can pivot and move into that. But under the current restrictions, where you have kids getting on a bus, and this was doubled down on, that you will wear a mask on a bus and you will wear it during school. There was some ambiguity perhaps in the language, but that was clarified as well, that it is expected that a mask be worn at all times throughout the school day and on the bus.
Even if you were maintaining the 6 foot distance.
In school.
I looked for all that, actually. I spent hours studying all that. I studied the governor's order. I studied the CDC recommendations. I studied some pediatric association recommendations. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't see it spelled out quite like that. Now, I'm not saying that's everybody's comfort level, but it wasn't in black and white like that. And there's a lot of interpretation going on. And there's a lot of misinformation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and amend the motion to starting with option C. In 4 weeks, we have a plan to roll out K through 5. And then in 9 weeks, if we have the restrictions and we have the ability, because our busing is going to be strained, we're going to have to use all the busing in order to roll out K through 5, then we work to getting middle school and high school back. We send a resolution to lift and have waivers on the restrictions to the governor. And then I'd like to add to that we form a teacher committee to advise with our teachers of the year and our chairs of the departments to give us additional input and guidance as to how to roll this plan out.
All right, I have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
Can I ask a question about the motion?
Yes.
Mr. Currituck, would you consider amending your recommendation to form a committee for Teacher of the Year to include counselors and school nurses as well, in addition to administration?
Absolutely. I amend that we include the positions that Janet just stated.
Then I will second that motion.
We have a first and we have a second. We have any further discussion?
Yes. It's already been stated that we've had employees that have tested positive for COVID. Can you imagine if school was in session right now, the problems that would have caused? That's mind-boggling. And plus, I know that they did one survey that, how many are high-risk employees, and it was like, 40% were either high-risk or had somebody that was high-risk.
Or had family members that were at risk.
Yeah. I just, I can't imagine.
That's what concerns me, Bill. Yeah, that's what concerns me, because if we were in session and a teacher tested positive, then the things that need to be put in place at that point for not only the teacher that she's come in contact with, the students go home and their parents, it's a domino effect.
Yeah, it's
really scary. And I know a lot of people are not taking it seriously, but when it hits home and it affects you personally, it makes you think twice. And I just want to keep our kids safe. And I know that this is hurting so many people, and I get it. My daughter-in-law, she's in this situation with children, and she works full time, and most people do. It takes two parents and their incomes to make ends meet. But I keep going back to, it's just trying to put another program in place where we do 2 days on, 3 days virtual, the busing situation, the child nutrition situation, the health and safety of our kids. And so if you have one student test positive, what that will do to the school and to the employees and to the other children. Say a child has a sinus infection and their fever, they're running a fever that morning, and they test them before they get on the bus, and they don't have COVID, but they have a sinus infection, or they have, just running a fever for some reason. And then you're going to stop everything. That parent has to be contacted, or that legal guardian. They have to come pick up the child. It is just a disaster waiting to happen. And I hope all the parents have thought about these things. When I spoke to the parent on the phone, she was like, I didn't think we had to do that. And, I didn't think about this, or I didn't think about that. But when you take all the pieces and put it together, I would like to see us go with the plan of starting with C and assessing it. If it happens sooner, great, but let's say for the first 9 weeks, and then reassess and make another plan at the end of 9 weeks.
I too am concerned for the safety of our children and our faculty and our staff, and I want everyone to have a choice. If parents want to go with option C for the whole 9 weeks, they should be able to do that. If we have staff members that are at high risk, we should be able to work around that and let them teach the children that are going to do the remote learning. And if it were as simple as saying, let's just do remote for 9 weeks and then we'll go back, great. But according to everything I've heard from Dr. Falsey and Mandy Cohen and all of those I've listened to, this virus is not going away. And in 9 weeks, it's not going to be gone. Are we going to continue with remote learning forever for our children?
But we don't have that option. We have to follow the governor's guidelines. It's either B or C. It's very simple. It's not, we can't just do whatever we want to do. We have to be
Are we going to do remote learning at the end of the 9 weeks? Or are we going to continue if the virus isn't gone?
Well, I don't think we can make that decision. We don't even know what the numbers are going to look like then. The numbers are rising every day.
Our numbers in Currituck have been low, but anyway, I don't think.
I'm just not willing to take the chance of the health of one child, or one teacher.
Well, that's true, but I think back, we've been faced with other things that could harm our children as well. Some terrible things in other parts of our nation have happened, and we didn't shut down schools because of what might happen. Instead, we implemented drills and what have you to keep our children safe. But it's not easy. And we do want to be safe, but we also want to educate our children as best we can. And I think about the children that have parents who are struggling financially, who are unable to care for them by themselves. And I know that abuse and neglect happens. I worry we haven't seen any of those children since March, but there's more than just the virus to worry about.
Yeah, I want to agree with you. I'm concerned about everybody. But when the medicine has more consequence than the thing you're trying to fight, you really need to reconsider what you're looking at. Because if this was investing and you were going to get a potential 0.65% on your return, or you were going to go to work and get 0.56 of your pay, or you were going to get 0.56 of your education after spending 12 years, Or I could put the numbers anywhere you want. And you wouldn't align yourself with it. And so I'm not saying that one child isn't too many. However, I am saying we've lost 30 in the nation from COVID-19 as of last week, infant to 14. Thus, we should get K through 5 back to school as quickly as possible. And I think 4 weeks gives us ample time to do that.
But, you're talking about, the number of kids and the survival rate of the younger kids, yet they still have to be taught in person by somebody, and they could be high risk. And so you're going to endanger their lives?
No, sir. We're going to not use high-risk people that have identified that. No, sir. We're going to either restructure and bring people in that are willing to take on that challenge and feel like they're low risk, or we're going to, we're going to bring some people in as substitutes or something, but we're going to do it. And we're not going to just put all the good out over the potential of 0.56. And that's not what children, that's 0.56 is the death rate. 99.35% is the recovery rate. That's all I'm saying.
I'm guessing if we pass this and, just as we might have restrictions eased, we might get news that things are even worse. We could come back and we could change. Is that correct?
Yes.
My understanding from Matt was that we're going to continue to evaluate this while we're doing the 9 weeks remote learning. So if things are better, then certainly we're going to go ahead with something sooner. Am I right, Matt?
Absolutely. The sooner we can make things more return to normal as possible, the sooner we're going to get there. But when it's again, doing B requires you to do C at the same exact time. And again, some of the comments from superintendents that have been in different places have said, well, I'm not really sure how we're doing this other component. Well, I'm not real comfortable saying I'm not really sure how we're doing another component. We're putting all our eggs in B, and then what about C? Or it becomes, I want to make sure that we provide the best product we can given the circumstances that we're in.
If we have 4 weeks, would that, do you not think that would be time to, if other systems are opening in 2, perhaps we could learn.
Yeah, we also have 6 elementary schools, and some of the school districts, they have a single elementary and they have a finite. So our logistics are different than the 1A schools in the region. So, across the Northeast region, Camden added the option and Edenton added the K3 or K5 option. I'm not sure. Elizabeth City's still pulling people, but the vast majority in the region, even Hyde County, went to C. I think when they started digging back and pulling in the logistical components of this, I think they want to see how some people that chose B, how does that work out for them with the younger elementary kids. It certainly seems a little more feasible than the secondary group out of the at a sooner pace. But again, that work to me should continue, that we can examine how can we bring back our kids. It doesn't mean that it's finite, that we're not going to look at it to the end of the 9 weeks. I would just hesitate to say that we can bring back 6 buildings in an online platform, even a K5 in a B setting with an AABB modified schedule with 50% capacity and masks in a 4-week time period, given the size that we have, because we'd have to do it across 6 different buildings. I think the challenges with 6 are different than 1.
We'd have to do that, the B. We still wouldn't have option A unless the governor had released something different.
Yep.
Could we do a survey? Could we do a survey for our parents with what's being proposed with this motion?
Well, most of the parents are going to say they want them back in school. And I understand that, but I don't think the parents understand what's involved. That's easy to say, and we want want the kids back in school. We don't like this. We don't like it at all. We want the kids back in school, but I think the parents, the majority would say, yes, they want their kids back in school because of employment and paying their bills, paying their mortgage.
I'm sorry, Karen. The polls, both statewide and nationally, when they're polling parents and teachers and so on, there is no clear definitive choice. It's consistently, you have about 40% of the people, no matter which group, wants to pick something, it wants the other one. So all boards, unfortunately, we're talking about currently you and in Currituck and me in this seat, we're all struggling with the same issue across the state and nationally with the exact same conversations. And no matter what choice is made, there's about 40% of people that are not going to be pleased with that decision. We're all in a tough spot at this point in time.
Thank you.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. We have a second. We've discussed it. All in favor?
Can we do a roll call vote?
Yes, Mr. Currituck,
Aye.
how do you vote? Ms.
Aye.
Kraft?
To bring kids back in 4 weeks, no matter what. I vote no.
Dr. Dobney?
No.
Okay, my vote is no. And Ms. Rose?
Yes.
Okay, motion does not carry. I have a motion. I would like to make the motion that we go with Plan C and we continue to evaluate the COVID-19 results, and hopefully we'll have a cure soon. Evaluate it, on a daily basis, and then in 9 weeks we'll make the decision. If we can make it before then, we can have another special call meeting and come up with another plan. But for right now, Plan C with 9 weeks.
I second that.
Can we discuss that briefly?
Yes. Any discussion?
Yes, ma'am. So what's going to happen when teachers need to deal with their children and they're supposed to be dealing with also their job? How do we differentiate them from the general public?
All of those questions. We have an upcoming August 6th meeting. Any questions you have such as that, I think we need to have a meeting to have a discussion concerning all of those types of things.
So we're not going to tell the people today and the teachers how they're going to be impacted, whether they're treated similar or indifferent, and how they have to deal with their children as a result of virtual learning. We're not going to let them know that today.
No, today's meeting is just to vote on whether we're going with Plan B or Plan C.
Yes, ma'am.
Any further discussion? Okay, we have a first, we have a second. All in favor?
I'd like a roll call.
Roll call.
Mr. Currituck?
No.
Ms. Kraft?
Yes.
Dr. Dobney?
Yes.
I vote yes. And Ms. Rose?
No.
Motion carries. We will go with Plan C. And please remember to contact Yvette if you have any items that you'd like to place on the August 6th agenda.
Yes, ma'am.
Do I have a motion that we adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second?
I second.
Meeting is adjourned. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Have a great day.
You as well.
Okay.
Back to the home inspection. Thank you, Yvette.
Busy. And if you have any homeowners that have horses, I can help you make that spin.
Okay.
I'm serious.